This is audio. Wait, there's just
Call the meeting to order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Miss Monroe-Naylor,
Present.
Mr. Collins,
Here.
Miss Gresham,
Present.
Miss Hurst,
Present.
Attorney Murphy.
present.
For the record, Attorney Murphy and Vice Chair Gonzalez will be remotely joining us on the meeting. Again, with the roll, Mr. Clerk?
Attorney Murphy,
Present. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Here.
Mayor Sarno,
Present. If we could all please rise for a moment of silence and then a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to each and every one of you, to the audience that's here and to the viewing audience, and again to each and every one, successful New Year and good health. We'll now move to voting items, the appointment of executive assistant to the school committee. Superintendent, Dr. Deneau, please.
Thank you, Mr. About that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy New Year to everyone. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to some and present to all Mr. Trini Vargas. The school committee did their due diligence as we collaborated together to find someone who had the skill set, the expertise, and the knowledge needed to be the executive assistant to the school committee. We thank you so much for saying yes. The school committee conducted the interviews and vetted each candidate carefully. They stacked credential against credential, and we're glad to see that Trini Vargas is the one who was selected by the school committee. So we applaud the school committee for a job well done. We thank Mrs. Montemayor for doing 2 jobs for a number of months. We appreciate you, Mrs. Montemayor. We applaud you.
Thank you.
And we welcome aboard Mr. Trini Vargas.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Is there any questions or comments? Is there a motion? And if Trini is to accept?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Naylor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Collins. Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Miss Monroe-Naylor, Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Miss Gresham,
Yes.
Miss Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
Yes, more than sufficient votes. Matter passes. Congratulations and thank you, Trini.
Maybe condolences. I'm not.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Nomination and election of the vice chairperson. Is there any motions at all?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I
Vice Chair
would,
Gonzalez.
yeah, thank you. I would like to nominate Miss Monroe-Naylor for Vice Chair.
Nomination made by Vice Chair Gonzalez for Ms. Naylor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hurst. Any discussion? Roll call vote is required. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Miss Monroe-Naylor,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Miss Gresham,
Yes.
Miss Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
Yes, more than sufficient vote. This matter passes. Congratulations. C is to approve the rules and regulations of school committee, Robert's Rules of Order. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Dr. Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will defer to the attorneys who are in our midst. I know that Robert's Rules of Order govern the procedures and the protocols during our open meeting laws as well as executive session. I don't know if there's anything additional that either of the attorneys would like to add, but I do present that Robert Rules of Order are the things that we use and then abide by for our school committee meetings.
Council, would you like to come to the podium to bring anything, any updates at all, or any changes at all? If not, nothing to add. So it's status quo as we've been operating before. Okay, any questions or comments of the legal counsel, school committee members? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion on the floor to accept?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Gresham. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hurst. Roll call vote is required. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Monroe Naylor,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Ms. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
Yes, board is sufficient vote. This matter passes. Thank you very much. E is to approve a 45-day extension of the current interdepartmental agreement between the Springfield Public Schools and the Springfield Police Department regarding access to the school surveillance cameras. I want to thank the subcommittee for getting this out here. We don't want this to lapse, and I'm hoping that we can wrap this up fully. But with that, let me turn it over to Superintendent Dr. Deneau.
Thank you, Mayor Sarno. We were fortunate to have a great show for the community input sessions of the subcommittee. A great deal of conversation was had, information was shared, information was reiterated. Amazing, thoughtful, insightful ideas were shared by the students and the family members and the community members who were present. We collected that information, and I believe the subcommittee will do their due diligence with the attorneys to ensure that several of those suggestions that were made end up in the language of the MOU. Again, the insightful conversation and the suggestions made by community members, as well as several of our students, most definitely was impressive, and we plan on moving forward as soon as possible to ensure the safety of our staff and students.
Thank you, Superintendent Deneau, Dr. Deneau. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Ms. Naylor, could you, I want to thank you for your efforts, and I did have a quick question presentation. When does this technically lapse, the 3-year contract? Was it January 10th?
Yes, it's in a few days
Okay.
that it will next week. And so the reason why we wanted to put this extension is that we were finally able to get everything in process with our new attorneys, and they have started to review what we have, and they're starting to consider the different comments that we received as well. The expectation is that we will have a legislative and contract subcommittee meeting as soon as possible to review their findings and their recommendations, and hopefully be able to get it on the full committee meeting for January 23rd. So although we're asking for a 45-day, I don't realistically think it's going to take that long.
I want to again thank you for your efforts. I was able to attend one of the meetings there, and I think we, to the public, we were able to answer a lot of questions, clarify a lot of misinformation. So I'm hopeful that we can move forward on the 3-year. I don't know if there's any little tweaks or this or that, but just to the viewing public, all school committee members, this is purely for the safety of our children, the students, the teachers, administration, staff, and visitors to school. If something catastrophic, God forbid, would happen, 8 times it's been in use, must be in agreement with the school department allowing the police department to go in there, and they can respond instantaneously to an incident. 7 were false incidents. But again, police department going in there immediately and not blindly. And 1 was an incident that they were able to quell quickly. So I thank incoming Vice Chair Naylor on that, and I look forward to continuing the successful programs. I don't know if there's any questions.
Just a point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I think we skipped an item.
Oh, we did. No.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we'll get to that. That's okay. This was more important. Not that, okay. But we wanted to get to that. So any other, I'm so focused on that camera stuff. Is
Mr.
there any?
Chairman,
Yes, Vice Chair Gonzalez.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add to that I'm hopeful working with all of you colleagues on the school committee to get this before the body, as Ms. Naylor had mentioned, and I'm hopeful there'll be a consideration on a longer term on this. I know folks said 3 years. I've said publicly to the media and to others, I'm hopeful we can get this even for a 5-year term. So that way, this body or any future members of this committee, we have it in place for a little longer without having to just come back to this thing every 3 years, unless there's a legal reason why that was the cadence that was selected or the term that was selected. So again, I'm a proponent on this, and I'm hoping we can extend that term longer. Thank you.
Vice Chair Gonzalez, thank you very much, and I totally agree with you. If we could bring Attorney St. Laurent or one of the attorneys up, is there a question? Again, it's an MOU or MOA. If we were to go to 5 years, if that, it's 3 years now. Would there be a question on that, or it's just perfunctory? Because it's an MOU, MOA. Okay, that's what I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, thank you, Attorney St. Laurent. Appreciate that.
Did he have to repeat it for the mic?
Sure. Georgia, you're right on the spot. Way to go, George.
There would be no issues with the terms because there's no financial implication.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank you, Attorney St. Laurent. Okay, any other questions or comments? And my apologies for jumping to that. No questions or comments? Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Gresham. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Collins. Roll call vote is required. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Monroe Naylor,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Ms. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
Yes, more than sufficient vote. This matter passes. Thank you very much. And again, to Ms. Naylor, the committee members, thank you very much. Okay, let's jump back to D, establish the chairpersons of standing committees. My apologies to Vice Chair Gonzalez. Well, actually, now it is Vice Chair-elect Naylor. So I will turn it over to you on the standing committees.
Okay, so I'm actually getting ready to move per suggestion of Mr. Collins as well. So for the establishment of the chairpersons, I did provide to Mr. Vargas, a list of my recommendations for the chairs in an effort to really help folks to become more educated in understanding different subcommittees. And so we don't yet have them filled in as far as who will be with what, but we do have the chairs listed.
Okay. Is there any, thank you, Vice Chair Naylor. Is there any questions or comments on this? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Vice Chair Gonzalez, or former Vice Chair Gonzalez. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hurst. Roll call vote is required. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Monroe Naylor,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Ms. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
Yes, more than sufficient vote. This matter passes. Thank you very much. Now we'll move to Section 3, informational discussion items. Attorney to review the ethics, rules, and regulations, open meeting, public documents. Counsel, if you would, Superintendent, Dr. Denault, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I defer to the attorneys at this time to review the ethics rules and regulations.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
Melissa Murray.
okay, again, Attorney
Hi,
Melissa Murray, yes. Ms. Murray, nice to meet you.
nice to meet you
Happy New
too.
Year.
Thank you. I apologize for being remote, but I have the flu and did not want to share that with all of you. So,
We appreciate
Happy New Year. I am going to share my screen, put together just a little PowerPoint to help guide our review and so that you have it as a resource going forward. So, Are you all able to see?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. So we're going to do an overview of the ethics, the conflict of interest law, open meeting law, and public records. I'm going to go through just some basic information. There's obviously a lot to cover here. And so for any specific situations that might come up for anyone or anything that you need further information on, I do think that that would be a conversation that we would need to have. But this will give everyone a good overview for the year ahead and to help guide, make sure that we're staying in compliance. So I'm happy to take questions as I go through, or we can do it all at the end. It's up to you, but if there are no questions right now, I will get started.
Questions or comments from school committee members? Okay, hearing none. Attorney Murray, go ahead, please.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start with the conflict of interest law. This is Massachusetts General Law 268A, seeks to prevent contracts between private interest and public duties to help ensure that we have, in terms of fostering public service and making sure that we have the public's trust and confidence. And so a lot of this has to do with making sure that there's no appearance of conflicts and making sure that there's nothing taking place that could basically, the public could question your motives or what's behind any decisions that you're making, whether you're working for a specific interest or you're taking bribes. It covers gifts, any sort of connection between family interests, public financial interests, and the interests of the school committee or the public school district. So it covers municipal employees, and as school committee members, you are municipal employees, which means you are covered by the conflict of interest law. And for purpose of the conflict of interest law, you need to make sure that your private interests and relationships don't conflict with your responsibility as school committee members. The requirements of the conflict of interest law means that upon becoming a municipal employee and then every 2 years after that, you need to complete the public interest conflict of interest online training program. So this used to be done, it's all online now. And so I have a link here to the conflict of interest online training program. If you haven't done this yet, or you think your 2 years might be up, you should check. And we should make sure that everyone is in compliance. We do need to make sure that we do this and we maintain the results of those training programs to show that we are in compliance. What I've done here in the next following slides is to give a summary of the conflict of interest law on some of the more specific aspects of the law that apply to school committee members or that might come up most often relative to your positions. Okay, so in terms of on the job as a school committee member while you're acting as a school committee member, as I mentioned, a lot of this has to do where you most often hear of the conflict of interest law being violated when we talk about things like bribes and gifts or misuse of position. So items that are covered here: bribes. Asking for or taking bribes is prohibited. And you'll see at the end of each section, I put a little S and then a number. So that refers to the section of the law that covers this area. If you have any other questions or you want to just look into this a little bit further, you could go to 268A and look at section 2, and that would discuss bribes. So bribes, prohibited. Gifts and gratuities, accepting or asking for gifts related to your position, is prohibited. The value of gifts in Massachusetts, anything over $50, is prohibited. Small gifts and tokens of appreciation, under $50, excuse me, are okay. I do think anything that creates, again, that impression of a conflict or impropriety would be something that would get us in trouble. But small little gifts or gratuities, a card around specific holidays, that sort of thing is fine. But you want to be careful about anything, any big gifts, any gifts over $50 that you would accept or that you wouldn't get but for your official position. There are some limited exceptions. And again, this is one of the things we would want to talk about if such a situation presented itself. But some sort of coverage to attend a training seminar or travel to something that's related to your role as a school committee member, where you might be looking into some sort of new technology or new curriculum, something to do with your role, but not necessarily something that would present a genuine risk if it's to advance the public interest is an exception. But those are very specific, so that would be something we would want to cover. But in terms of if you're comped to attend a conference or that sort of thing, that would be something we could discuss as an exception to see if it qualified. Misusing your position. Can't misuse your position to get something that you would not otherwise be entitled to. Some sort of beneficial placement for a student or a relative in a school or in a school program. If you would not otherwise be entitled to it or not otherwise qualify for it, you can't misuse your position to get that. Any self-dealing or nepotism, participating as a municipal employee in a matter that's going to affect your immediate family or business, you can't participate in that. And I've just included there who would count as an immediate family member. False claims, presenting a false claim to your employer for payment. This most often comes up with someone submitting false timesheets. So
Attorney Murray, hold on one second.
Yeah.
A point for Mr. Collins.
Can we go back to the last slide?
Yes.
Thank you.
Isn't there a restriction on multiple gifts from one individual that would exceed the $50?
Yes. It's $50 altogether, correct. So if someone gives you gifts of $49 like quarterly, that would exceed.
Okay,
the
I just
$50.
wanted, I know from taking the course that was there.
Yeah.
I just didn't see that clearly in that. That's all. Thank you.
No, nope, that's a good point. And again, this is just an overview, so it wasn't possible to include every single variation here, but that's a very good point. If someone stops just short of 50, but then gives you a second gift that pushes you over the 50, that would also be a violation. Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. No, thank you. And I'm glad that you took the course already. Okay. So we did false claims, the appearance of conflict. So this is acting in a manner that would make a reasonable person think that you can be improperly influenced. So even if you don't have a connection or you wouldn't act on it, if you are acting in a way that someone might think that you have a conflict or would act in an improper way, then that is prohibited. There is an option here to publicly notify or to give notice of any conflicts or to make a disclosure in writing. So if you do have a family member that is a teacher or works in the schools, for instance, you can provide notice. You would just need to exclude yourself from votes or situations, conversations that directly impact that family member, but you can provide notice and disclose a conflict or potential conflict, and that can help provide some coverage for this particular aspect of the conflict of interest law. And if anyone is in that situation, again, that's something that we can discuss further. But anything that would make it seem as though you can't be fair and objective because of a relationship or an affiliation would normally create this appearance of a conflict that we would want to address up front. And then confidential information, improperly disclosing or personally using confidential information obtained through your position as a school committee member is prohibited. So after hour restrictions, when you're not operating as a school committee member, there are also some restrictions in terms of taking a second job or having a second job that conflicts with your duties as a school committee member. Divided loyalties, receiving pay from anyone other than the city or town to work on a matter involving the city or town, or in this case, the school district, acting as an agent and attorney for anyone, other than the city and town is also prohibited. So that's something to keep in mind. And then inside track, being paid by your city or town school district, directly or indirectly, under a second arrangement in addition to your job as a school committee is prohibited unless an exemption applies. And then even after you leave your position as a school committee member, there are also some restrictions that you will need to keep in mind. After you leave your municipal job, you may never work for anyone other than the municipality on a matter that you worked on as a municipal employee. A 1-year cooling off period. After 1 year after you leave your municipal job, you may not participate in any matter over which you had official responsibility during your last 2 years of public service. And this applies also if you go into a business where you have business partners who might have some connection or relationship to the city or to the school department, and are working in some capacity. The restrictions will apply to them as well, until your municipal service ends. So before I go on to the open meeting law, that was just an overview of the conflict of interest law. Does anybody have any questions on that before we go over? And as I mentioned, you have the sections there after each to refer to. And then there are also some guides out there. And of course, any specific situations we can handle on a one-on-one basis.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Ms. Hurst, please.
Thank you. Attorney Murray, in the past, with our previous council, we used to get notification of who was currently up or who was quote unquote in good standing with the conflict of interest training. So we were told, or like there was record or documentation of like, okay, Mrs. Hurst, you're all set for this year. You're scheduled to take it next year. And then we would take the exam and we would submit it to our council, who would then file it with the city clerk. Is it possible that your firm is going to do the same for us?
We certainly can.
Fact of it in the past.
Sure, absolutely. We certainly can. I can, I guess I would need to just confirm with either the firm or if those records may be, were transferred to, and Trini would have access to those to see what the dates of the last tests were for everyone. And then we can create kind of like a spreadsheet or something that helps keep everyone, in compliance. It's also something that probably, I'm happy to do it. It's probably also something that could be handled by Trini or whoever is acting in the capacity of the executive secretary for the school committee. It's up to all of you.
And that's fine. I just think we need to have a process. And I know that in the
Absolutely.
past we had one.
I'm happy to help coordinate and set up a process, whether it's through our firm or more centralized within the school committee, school administration offices, to help make sure everyone stays on top of things, and that so that you get that reminder as opposed to having to keep track of it on your own. I think that makes sense, and I'm happy to assist with that.
Thank you, Attorney Murray and Ms. Hurst. So just for point of clarification, through Attorney Murray, that Trini, Mr. Clerk, that would probably go to you to inform as priorly school committee members whether they were all set or they're up, have to take the test or the exam again. I think it's every couple of years or so. I'm not sure on it. So
Every two. Yep.
every two. Any other questions or comments before Attorney Murray continues on? Okay. Ms. Hurst, you're all set. Okay. Attorney Murray, go ahead.
Thank you. The next that we'll cover is the open meeting law. And so the open meeting law is to ensure transparency and to make sure that deliberations of a public body are transparent, because the public has a right to know what's happening with its elected officials, and to make sure that there's a level of transparency when public funds are involved, especially. And want to make sure that government operations are being managed efficiently. So this is covered under Massachusetts General Law 30A. The responsibility for enforcing the open meeting law is centralized under the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office is available under the Division of Open Government to answer questions, to provide training. They conduct investigations, they handle complaints, and they also issue orders. And so you can go to them for some assistance, and also check out the orders that they've already issued to see whether or not it addresses a question that we may have. But they are responsible for enforcing the open meeting law. Similar to the conflict of interest training, there is a certification that happens along with the open meeting law. It doesn't happen repeatedly, so it's something you do when you first become a member of a public body. there's an open meeting law guide that the Attorney General puts out, and along with that is some materials, educational information, and there's a certificate that gets signed upon receipt of that information that then gets returned to the Attorney General to make sure that you have complied with that. So this is something that everyone does need to familiarize themselves with, and then make sure that that certification has been sent in. So similar to the conflict of interest law, following this, what we can do is check in and see what records already exist in terms of making sure that everyone has done this certification. And if we find that someone hasn't, or we don't have a record of this having been completed for somebody, we'll make sure that they go through, review the materials, and sign off on the certification. So what I've done on some of these slides, because there is a lot of information out there on open meeting law, and the Attorney General's office has put out a number of resources, is I've linked to information within the PowerPoint so that you can also use this as a guide going forward. So at the bottom here where it says open meeting law guide and educational materials, that takes you to the Attorney General's website where the guide is. Also, the certification form is there so that you can use that as a resource going forward. Didn't make sense to reproduce the entire guide for you here as part of this PowerPoint. I've just pulled out a few highlights, but the entire guide is available at that link.
Attorney Murray, any more presentation at all? Okay. Hearing none, is there any other questions? Or Attorney Murray, are you done with your presentation? I just saw another slide
Oh,
pop up.
no, right. No, I'm sorry. I haven't. I did do a summary. And I also don't know how much time you allotted for this, so I apologize. If I'm going over, I can certainly speed up because everything is in the PowerPoint. I did want it to be a resource going forward. But I also wanted to make
Fine,
sure.
no, you're just doing a basic synopsis or just a
Yeah.
cursory review on it. So, no, continue on. There was just a lapse there. So, and I just saw something pop up on the screen. So, my apologies. Why don't you continue on? If school committee members have any questions, they'll ask questions and we'll go from there. So, go ahead, Attorney Murray. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just a quick summary on the open meeting law. With certain exceptions, all meetings of a public body must be open to the public. A meeting is defined as a deliberation of a public body with respect to any matter within the body's jurisdiction. So this becomes a little bit tricky and is a lot oftentimes where public bodies or members of a public body get hung up because the deliberation, as defined by the open meeting law, is an oral or written communication through any medium, including electronic mail, between a quorum of the public body on any public business within its jurisdiction. So that means any exchange over email, any exchange that would happen over text messaging or any sort of like messaging program. If it's done between a quorum of members, that's a deliberation, and that is an open meeting violation if you haven't invited the general public to attend or to be part of that conversation. So we do need to be careful about email communications, any sort of electronic communications, any meetings where you are discussing, even if it didn't start out as a meeting, anytime that you're discussing or having what the open meeting law defines as a deliberation between a quorum of the members. Even something else to keep in mind, an expression of an opinion on a matter that's under the jurisdiction of the school committee. Let's say there's an agenda goes out. Simply sending out an agenda to all members of the school committee is fine. There's no deliberation in that. However, if a member was to respond and send an email to all of the members, or at least a quorum of the members, expressing his or her opinion on something, even if no one responds, that can be considered a deliberation. So we have to be really careful about how you're communicating with one another to make sure that we stay on the right side of the open meeting law. So this just goes through some of those examples, and it includes that at the bottom there, just to be careful about providing any sort of communication to a quorum or more of the members that expresses an opinion or is a communication in terms of a deliberation between more than one members. There's 5 exceptions to an open meeting law violation. So You could all go to an on-site inspection of a project. If a school is being built, if you're getting a gym redone and you want to go and check on the progress, you could all go to that together. You can't deliberate about anything at those, but you can all be together at such of like an inspection or a review of a building, that sort of thing. You can attend a conference or a training program together, again, as long as you're not deliberating. You can attend a meeting of another public body if you all went to a school council meeting, a city council meeting, or any other meeting such as that would be fine. Um, Meetings of quasi-judicial boards and commissions held solely to make decisions of an adjudicatory proceeding are not subject, and town meetings, which are subject to other legal requirements, are not governed by the open meeting law. So those are the 5 exceptions. So you are able to all be together. You can't deliberate at those meetings, and that's kind of the reason why such exceptions exist. Okay. Under the open meeting law, we have to provide notice of meetings to the public at least 48 hours in advance, excluding Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays. Need to be posted as soon as reasonably possible. There are exceptions for emergency topics that come up that couldn't reasonably be anticipated in advance of the meeting. You need to post the agenda in a way that is accessible to members of the public, and then also allows them to understand the topics that are going to be discussed at the meeting. So again, I have down here public body checklist. This is a checklist that's put out by the Attorney General's office that has good information to make sure you cover in terms of notice. Executive session. So all meetings must generally be open to the public, but there are certain topics that may be discussed in what's called executive session. There are rules for entering into executive session. You must start an open session. The chair has to state the reason for the executive session, the subjects that are going to be discussed, and whether you're going to go back into open session. So there are these rules. Again, the AG's office has a checklist down there for executive session. There are 10 reasons that a body can go into executive session. I've listed out the 3 that most often come up with school committees to discuss the reputation, character, and physical condition or mental health of a professional, or discuss the discipline, dismissal, or complaints brought against a public officer, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations for non-union personnel, and then to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if the meeting if meeting in open session would have a detrimental effect on bargaining or litigation. So there are 7 more, but those are the 3 that you would most often see used. Meeting minutes under the open meeting law. Meeting minutes must be approved by the school committee and made public or available within a timely manner. Generally, it's within 30 days, except for good cause. Now, executive session minutes can be withheld a little bit longer until the reason for the executive session purpose has been satisfied and would no longer be in jeopardy of interfering with the reason why you went into the executive session in the first place. So those meeting minutes and the documents and exhibits used in a meeting do become public records and become part of the official record of the meeting and would be just subject to disclosure under the public records law. So again, the AG's office has a checklist and I've linked to it down there. Any questions on open meeting law before we get to public records?
Yes, could I ask one
Vice
question?
Chair, Mr. Collins?
I believe that every year in the past, we had the open meeting law distributed to us, and we had to sign saying that we had received a copy of it. That's the way it's always gone. Is that going to happen this year?
It certainly can. At the beginning, I mentioned that certification that takes place. So if you did that annually, I think that's fantastic. Then we will continue that annually. So we can do that. You get all the materials along with the certification form, which you signed saying that you received and reviewed the materials. We would hold on to that certification so that we can show compliance. We can certainly do that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Any other questions of Attorney Murray? Okay, hearing none. Go ahead, Attorney Murray.
Okay, thank you. And apologies. So last is the public records law. State and federal law on this is pretty similar. Every government record in Massachusetts is presumed to be a public record unless it can be withheld under a specifically stated exemption. Okay. So individuals have the right to inspect, copy, or have a copy of records provided upon payment of a reasonable fee, if any. And there's a number of different kind of rules laid out in terms of what you can charge in terms of a fee, if any, which I have not included here. But if this ever comes up, then this would be something we would deal with the records access officer. But generally just thinking about what is a public record and what would be subject to the public records law. The law defines public record to include all books, papers, maps, photographs, recorded tapes, financial statements, statistic tabulations, or other documentary material or data, regardless of physical form or characteristics, made or received by an officer or employee of a Massachusetts governmental entity, unless it fits one or more of the exceptions. So in terms of your role as a school committee member, I think the most important thing to be aware of is email. Email is considered a public record. So it includes emails made and received by an individual in their capacity as a governmental employee. So that's a few things. One, that means your emails need to be maintained in a manner that would allow access if we get a request for those emails. So everyone should be using their official school committee email address. You shouldn't be using any sort of personal email address. You should make sure that all communication sent over email, and I'm sure this would not be an issue for anyone on this school committee, but just as a reminder, generally maintain a professional tone. Make sure anything that you're writing in an email, you know that you would be okay if that was going to be requested by someone and had to be turned over to somebody. If you do create records, whether it's any sort of email, document communication, and you do that outside of your government email address, or if you do it on a home computer, but it's somehow used in your role as a school committee, we do need to make sure that that is being saved to the school district's server network system so that we have access to it if we need it for any sort of records request. The other one that we already talked about a little bit are meeting minutes. So meeting minutes, once they're approved, become public records. Those would need to be available if they were requested. Oftentimes, and you have this as well, meeting minutes regularly get posted online to a website, so it's not really an issue in terms of requests, but we do need to make sure that we're regularly approving meeting minutes so that they can be made available. That is one of the things that most often you see complaints about is the public requesting copies of minutes for meetings that haven't been approved or made available online. And so they're looking for records of those meeting minutes so that they can double check them for one thing or another. And so if they aren't posted regularly or regularly approved by the school committee, you could get an open meeting law violation or a public records request for those minutes. So the law requires that every agency or municipality designate one or more employee as a records access officer. So that's the person who's going to be responsible for responding to public records requests. And so this, the information I'm giving you about public records law is really very, very summary, because the person who really needs to know the most about public records is going to be your public records access officer. That's the person who needs to get the training in terms of being able to respond to these requests, to assess whether or not there's going to be a fee charged, and if so, how to calculate that fee and which materials will be responsive to an individual's request. They're also the person or the people who would be responsible for making sure you comply with the timelines in terms of when a response needs to be given, and how much information is given. So I'm sure you already have this person designated. We at this point just need to, we'll work to figure out who this person is and make sure that that person has all the training and information that they need to effectively do the position. But that's the person who's going to be responsible for making sure you remain in compliance in terms of responding to requests for information. And so that's really it. Does anyone have any other questions?
Thank you, Attorney Murray. Any questions or comments of Attorney Murray?
Not of Attorney Murray, Mr. Mayor, but of the body, if possible.
Sure.
Do we know who our public record access officer is? Is it you? Okay. Oh. Okay.
On the city
guy
side.
serves for us on Okay.
Thank you. All public
Yeah.
records go through the same portal, through the Next Request portal, and then they're vetted through the different departments. Ours would go to the legal services paralegal, and then would be vetted back.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Ms. Hurst. Any other questions or comments?
I have just one
Yes.
comment.
Yes.
Attorney Murray, if you can
Thank you.
also,
Nathan?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attorney Murray, if you can also provide us with an update regarding social media. I know that there was something going back and forth with the Mass Association for School Committees where we were discussing whether or not it was considered public record if we post anything on social media, and the variation between a page for your committee, personal committee, versus you commenting on something. And I don't know if there were ever any findings on that, but I think any updates on that would be really helpful as well.
Okay. We can provide that, absolutely.
Thank you, Vice Chair Naylor. Thank you, Attorney Murray. Any other questions or comments of Attorney Murray? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to establishing a voting order. This is highly scientific and technical how we do this. So, Mr. Clerk, are you ready to provide the established voting order technique? We used to have a cigar box with chips in it there, so we've moved up now. There's a number in there, yeah. Yeah, it's like a game show.
There's got to
We
be
used,
an app.
we used to have, and the city council too, was the cigar box here too. Oh, you would have to, okay, we'll have the Vice Chair Naylor pull. This is for, because School Committeeman Gonzalez and School Committeeman Attorney Peter Murphy are remote. So, who are you pulling for now?
This is for,
She hasn't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
This is for Attorney Murphy.
Okay, this is for Peter Murphy.
And I don't want to sit next to Miss Hurst again this year.
You got your wish, number two.
Okay, okay, so we have for now, so now the Vice Chair Naylor will pull for School Committeeman Diagon.
Well, he gets to sit with his buddy on remote because Josiah is number one.
Okay, so Mr. Gonzalez is number one. Vice Chair Naylor, I believe, pulled number two for Attorney Murphy. And I'll go to the other school committee members. What numbers did you pull? Ms. Hurst?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Number 5.
Number 5. Mr. Collins?
Number 3.
Number 3. Ms.
Not
Fresh?
sure I want to sit next to Murphy, but
Yeah. Number 4. Okay, you want to adjust seats now, or we'll do it at the next meeting? That's fine.
it'd be fine.
Okay, so Mr. Clerk, did you get that? So you have all the seat numbers, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, now we'll move to discuss the need for an assistant superintendent, how to move forward to reinstate the position within the district. Superintendent, Dr. Denal, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Collins?
this item is out of order to be on our agenda. We have already had a legal opinion and confirmation from the Mass Association of School Committees that the organization of the school department and the day-to-day operations of the school department are the jurisdiction of the superintendent, not the school committee.
Okay, a point made on that under Ed Reform 93, day-to-day operations organization is under the superintendent, he or she. And if she seems to move fit down the road, I guess that can be brought up again.
Mr. Mayor,
Vice Chair Naylor?
I have another request.
Sure.
It might actually be helpful too in regards to the statement that Mr. Collins just made, is if the next few items, if we could table them and circle back. I did request this information and I wasn't clear with Mr. Clerk that I did not expect it at today's meeting for a conversation, but for us to be able to circle back and review and find out at which time it makes sense for us to have this conversation if necessary and to go over it with our attorneys.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay, so this is, we'll just say table or not properly, I'm gonna say out of order, but not properly put forth because it has to be generated through Madam Superintendent. So we'll get clarification. So we'll,
Mr. Chairman?
yes, Mr. Gonzalez.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to add to Mr. Collins' point on this, and more specifically, and the legal firm here can clarify, but with more specificity to Chapter 71, Section 59, which establishes the authority of the school committee surrounding the superintendent, and then also any other of these ancillary positions such as assistant or associate superintendent. One, just to confirm, yes, Mr. Collins, you are correct that in part, at least how it reads here, it is the jurisdiction of the superintendent, but it then comes forward, more specifically, I'll cite the language here, that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, so I think that that's the first piece, the superintendent would have to trigger it, the school committee may also establish and appoint positions of assistant or associate superintendents who shall report to the superintendent, and the school committee shall fix the compensation if paid, and it goes on and on and on. Ending here, it says that we shall not be, the recommendation shall not be unreasonably withheld. So I think it's important to speak around that with specificity. I think the point you were trying to get to, Mr. Collins, was pretty accurate, but again, the superintendent would have to bring forth recommendation, but again, the authority still lies within the body to approve, and or if there is a disapproval, the superintendent may request a written reason according to the law as to why committee members disapprove. Does that sound up to par to the legal counsel, what I just cited?
Counsel? We got dueling counsels here,
Yeah.
so it's not Jeremy.
I think Attorney Murray's trying to jump in here.
Well,
Yes, I mean, I think
Attorney,
I'd like to change.
why don't you come on up to the podium? That way George doesn't have to play Vanna White there, okay? Thank you, George.
Sure, I'd like to time this.
Attorney Keefe,
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm sorry. I'd like a little more time to review, but that does, upon review of the statute, which Attorney Laurent just sent to me, that does sound accurate, but I think it gives us, it would behoove us to have a little more time to kind of consult and think about exactly what we want to do. I didn't know exactly what the school committee's position was on this. It's a new topic for us. But yes, the way I'm reading the statute is the recommendation would first come from the superintendent, and the school committee would then approve or disapprove.
Yes, just to clarify again, under the Ed Reform of 93, and also the Mass Association of School Committees ruling that we received from Glenn Kuchar a while ago. And speaking of that, congratulations to Ms. Hurst too on your election there as the El Presidente on that too. That popped into my mind there. So, but yes, and Mr. Gonzalez is right. If and when the superintendent, he or she, or this is Dr. Deneau, decides if, again, runs the day-to-day operations and organization, if there was an assistant superintendent and or associate superintendent, that would have to be put forth by the superintendent. And then, yes, the school committee would vote up or down on that person, he or she. Also, currently, there is no funded position for that, and, that have to be looked at. So, the clarification's been there. Vice Chair Naylor's brought it forth about clarifying how discussion, if this was to occur. So,
Mr. Mayor.
yeah, Mr.
I'm
Collins?
sorry.
Mr. Collins?
Yeah, I don't disagree with my colleague that absolutely what he cited, if there is that position, falls under our jurisdiction. And I would be just as adamant protecting our rights and responsibilities as I am with the superintendent. And I think we need to make sure we draw the distinction. Taking away any of the duties or any of the rights of the superintendent sends a message that undermines their credibility. And I don't think this party wants to do that.
Ms. Hurst?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't disagree with anything that has been said thus far with respect to what Mr. Collins has shared and with what Mr. Gonzalez had shared. And I don't want to speak for you, Mrs. Monroe Naylor. The way that I understood it, at least at the last meeting when it came up, just to allow for some context, was that there was going to be a discussion. And so my hope was that we were going to have a discussion during like a working meeting to at least be able to share with you, Dr. Janal, why or why not we think that that position is important considering how large our district is, succession planning, things of those nature. So I agree. I don't want to undermine you. That's your decision. I do think that this body has responsibilities such as having to vote. We have to think about compensation and the budget. But more importantly, I think it would just be a really good idea to be able to have an above board, transparent conversation. And I think that this particular meeting would not allow for that. And it would have to be like a working session where we could really talk about like what are the pros and cons. And then you, of course, would be the one to ultimately decide. But it is something that has come up amongst this body prior to your arrival. And so to Ms. Monroe Naylor's point, I think it was just like we should begin to talk about these things sooner rather than later.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Ms. Hurst. Mr. Collins.
Oh, it wasn't me, that was.
Oh, I couldn't, okay, there's a little echo here.
Yes.
School Committeeman Gonzalez, then we'll go to School Committee Woman Gresham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to bring some organizational context, piggybacking off of the last speaker's comments, that in the past, in my short tenure on the school committee, there was an assistant superintendent, and then there was a lead chief, a schools officer as a part of the organizational structure and chart. And I just want to make sure that we're being both fair and equitable to our current sitting superintendent by allowing her the space, knowing that we're going to support her, depending on what she decides to bring forward in terms of any organizational changes, seeing as that both of those positions currently are not staffed, be it maybe folks are on leave or the position doesn't exist, but currently as a part of her org chart, Dr. Denal does not have either of those positions for, I believe, the third largest school district in New England. So I want to make sure that Dr. Denal, I don't know what the prerogative of other members are, that I will be a proponent in supporting you on any organizational changes. And to the chairman's point in regards to the budget, this body in the past has made changes mid-year around any budgetary items. So I think that where there is a will, there certainly could be a way. And I just want to make sure we're being fair and equitable to the current sitting superintendent, and that Dr. Denal, you understand that at least it's my intent, and I believe the intent and will of the body, that we want you to succeed as our superintendent here in Springfield. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Ms. Gresham, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This position has been vacant now for a while. So I think putting it on the agenda for next week, the working session, that we can sit down and discuss and see where we're going forward with this position.
Thank you, Ms. Gresham. Any other questions or comments?
May I say something, Mayor?
Yes, Attorney Murphy, please.
Thank you very much. I would tend to agree with everyone. I think that we need to give Dr. Denal the tools to succeed. And if she needs assistant superintendent or deputy superintendent, we, for many decades, we did have that position, and it was an important position. So I think the budgetary issues can be worked out fairly easily. But in the organizational chart, as Josiah indicated, it has changed a little over the last couple of years, and maybe Dr. Denal needs to have the resources in the organizational structure that's going to help her succeed and help us all succeed. So I would certainly be open to discussing that, and whether it's next week or whenever it is. If that's something that the superintendent needs, I think we should give her the tools, to succeed if that's going to help the district.
Thank you, Attorney Murphy. And you look good, Murph. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Collins.
putting this on the next working session, which I think is in 2 weeks or next week,
The 9th, I think.
I think would be rushing the superintendent. She may need more time to decide on her organization, and that I think that's really a rush timetable. And I wouldn't want to be put in that position, and I don't want to put her in that position. I'd like to see the superintendent bring it forward when she thinks it's appropriate.
And I thank you, Mr. Collins, Vice Chair Naylor, and I agree with that. Again, it's under the superintendent's purview on day-to-day and operation, organizational, and as we're going to, I know she's doing her homework now on the MCAS, which we're going to go into, and that's going to take some time because we want to make sure we keep standards and requirements on it. So I know the Vice Chair and I agree with that. So maybe we need to, if and when, again, under the purview of Superintendent Dr. Denal, she wants to bring forth that she wants an organizational change, and we'll consider it if and when at that point in time. So we'll follow her lead on that situation.
Just one other point, Mr. Mayor. The attorney that spoke, there's a recent legal opinion that you may want to ask our in-house attorney for. It's not very old. It's a year or two old, whatever. But that you may want to get that as part of your research.
Any other questions or comments on this? It's good that it's out there. Whether there needs to be movement or adjustment, or again, we will follow the lead and direction of Superintendent Dr. Denal. Okay, with that, let's now move to D, is to identify strategy and discuss future graduation requirements for the district due to Commonwealth voting on eliminating the requirement for students to pass the MCAS to graduate from high school. And I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Dr. Denal. We are obviously going to stay to high standards, and we want to make sure we describe not only but delineate and set forth what exactly it takes to receive the diploma from the Springfield Public School System.
Mr. Mayor, if I can interject before the superintendent, I don't mean to upstage you, Superintendent. I think Vice Chair already said that she wanted to see that postponed. And our typical process is to go through subcommittee and not come directly to committee. So I think the appropriate subcommittee obviously would be curriculum programs to start work on it. Thought I heard that
Yes,
the Vice Chair, okay.
I did. I did make the request that we table that item and the last item as well, so that we can send that to subcommittee for
Yes.
review and then have it brought back to the full body.
Just and agree on that. I think I'd said it earlier too, that the superintendent is doing her due diligence on making sure we keep high standards and requirements on that. And so there's a motion then, and this is the go to committee. Motion by Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Naylor. Roll call vote is required. And actually, it's not
Oh, yeah, I was gonna-
on this discussion, but we're going to go to subcommittee as we usually do on that. And then E, the final thing, this is the proper protocol. This is to discuss the possibility of dedicating the Central High School basketball court after Travis Best, one of Springfield's native sons and one of the all-time greats. Community members had reached out to me. I had mentioned it. I had sent also emails, all school committee members, letting them know that the reach out came to me. And I think it's a no-brainer. We brought it up last meeting. We have to bring it out in a formal meeting. Then we go to subcommittee to discuss. But Travis, again, one of the all-time greats, All-American at Central High School, went on to a great collegiate career at Georgia Tech. Had a standout career in the NBA, especially with the Indiana Pacers when they played for the NBA championship. Played in Italy. But here's the biggest thing. Travis has always stayed close here in Springfield under his Youth Initiative Foundation. He continues to give back to youth programs, and he's a shining example. So when it was brought to our attention that the Central basketball court was not named, we thought it was a no-brainer. So I thank the school committee for the indulgence, and as Vice Chair Naylor said, we're going to proper protocol kicks back to subcommittee, appropriate subcommittee, and then we'll bring it out to the full committee. And at that appropriate time, if it's voted affirmatively, which I assume it will be, then we'll stage a nice an event.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Collins, yes.
just as a point of order, so that we follow the process correctly, this one does need a vote to send it to building and maintenance? Because that's what the process, we have to vote as a body
Yeah.
to send it to building and maintenance. And then building and maintenance brings it back to the full body. So I would make a motion that we send this to the building and maintenance subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. You are our parliamentarian, and I appreciate that. So there's a motion made by Mr. Collins, second by Ms. Hurst. Roll call vote is required. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. This is for a 3-point game-winning shot for track.
Ms. Monroe Naylor,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Ms. Gresham, Ms. Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
Yes, more than sufficient votes, matter passes. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, Ms. Hurst, motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Gresham. Roll call vote is required. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Monroe Naylor,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Ms. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
Yes, more than sufficient votes, matter passes. Thank you for watching. Happy New Year, successful New Year, good health, and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.